Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Recruit Military Live, a continuing series of live broadcasts where we cover all things military transition, veteran employment, mil spouse employment, and whatever else we can come up with. My name is Lucas Connolly, and I'll be your host today. Today's topic is why recruit military, a conversation about the services and partnerships that Recruit Military has to offer, and why it is the place to be for transitioning service members, for veterans, job seekers, and for mil spouses seeking employment. We're joined today by a very special guest coming to us live from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's a veteran and a distinguished alumni of the United States Army's 82nd Airborne all the way. He's currently our DoD Programs Director for Recruit Military, not to mention all-around great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Newsome.
Lucas, thanks so much for having me on today.
Glad you could make it. And now that you know who we are, we'd like to know who you are out there in live stream land. Hit that chat window. Let us know where you're watching us from, who you are, who you're with, and what your status is. Are you in transition or you're about to retire? Are you a veteran seeking employment, a caregiver, or some other category that we haven't thought of yet? If you've got any questions, hit the chat window and we'll do our best to answer those questions as quickly as we can. Chris, let's get right down to it. It's been a super weird 18 to 24 months with this. COVID has really changed the way, at least the world of his employment has looked. For in years past, if you asked your manager, "Can I work from home?" they would look at you like you were nuts. Now work from home seems to be normal, and now we've got this other thing going on where the Great Resignation. Everybody's quitting their jobs. What is going on? Has the whole world gone upside down?
Yeah, it certainly feels like that sometimes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In the past, that was a luxury that was almost, you don't ask it without putting a scarlet letter on yourself. Can I work remotely? Whether it be for a day or for part of your regular schedule. Now it is, to not use a cheesy term, it's the new norm.
Yeah.
What we're seeing across the board is so many positions that were traditionally in a physical setting, meaning you needed to have a butt in a chair in an office setting. So many of these positions are now being converted over to teleworking or remote positions, and it's because so many companies over the last 18 months have had the opportunity to truly audit every element of their organization. Because when COVID first hit and things were shut down, elements of the economy were shut down, elements of
Mm-hmm.
income and revenue production were shut down. So every company across the country had to kind of scramble to try to figure out how to make it work, how to survive, how to continue to grow. And one of those items is a huge overhead expense, and that's brick and mortar. There
Yeah.
are some organizations that'll never be able to get away from it. If you have to turn a wrench, or if your position requires you to be on site to do something in particular, there's no way around it. But for many of us, being able to at least, if we have a laptop, if we have a Wi-Fi signal, we can work, in most settings. So, yeah, it's very odd right now. There are so many companies that are scrambling to try to not just hire but to also retain, and it's actually it lends itself to being a perk for the actual job seeker. So for folks within any demographic, we focus on military, you and I, and the folks here at Recruit Military. But for any organization, it's time to look at where you are and to start asking yourself some hard-hitting questions. Is this where I want to retire? Is this where I want to
Yeah.
spend the next 10, 20 years of my life? And for those that answer isn't a glaring yes, they're going to look elsewhere. And that kind of leads us to the Great Resignation. I was looking at some interesting data recently, and some of this coming from independent studies, some of this coming from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. I've seen numbers as high as 50% or more of all people are willing to make a career pivot right now, mid
Mm.
stride. And that can be worrisome for an employer, that's looking at their retention strategy. They got to keep the ship moving. So we have high volumes of individuals that have had the last 18 months to really, one on the company side, audit their overhead expenses and to try to understand how to make the business keep working. And for individuals in the job market, it's been a matter of them auditing their work life and assessing as to whether
Oh
or
yeah.
not where they are is the perfect place for them. So, yeah, interesting dynamics on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people during their furlough or their elective quarantine periods or during the lockdowns, kind of may have broken through a barrier of fear. and then gotten to the point where like, wait a minute, I didn't have a paycheck. Maybe another member of the family was the sole breadwinner. I didn't have a paycheck for 6 months. I didn't go to work for a year, and I didn't lose the house, and they didn't come take the car back. We managed to squeeze our budget down. So yeah, actually, retrospection for employer and employee alike.
Yeah, a lot of silver
Now,
linings. They're always tucked in there.
yeah, absolutely. Now, Chris, I'm afraid to say, or maybe it's a good thing I say because it's a part of my job. I do spend entirely too much time on social media. It's weird. I spend almost all day on and off of social media, and what do I do as soon as I get off the clock? I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I can never get away from it. It seems like as we look out there into the space, there are just legions. There are just droves of agencies, organizations, funds, and foundations, and programs all claiming to support the veterans. An equal number of self-proclaimed transition experts, employment experts, resume writers. My head hurts just trying to sort through it all. And more employment websites and job boards than I can count. With this huge sea of options, and the service members and veterans and mil spouses out there trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, what is it about Recruit Military that makes us the go-to place?
Yeah, loaded question. I very much like you am biased. We're fans of the entity that we work with. We, always a tip of the cap to every organization out there that's trying to make an impact. And there's a lot of phenomenal organizations out there, but it is busy. It's a very busy space. A lot of individuals and entities trying to or claiming to be X, Y, and Z. And when it comes to transition, it's really tricky uh, to be a transition expert because most of us that went through that transition, you went through it once, maybe
Yep.
twice. There may be scenarios where you went twice. Maybe you ETS, you were on IRR, you got called back. There's scenarios for sure, but generally speaking, nobody has it completely mastered because we've all only ever done it once. And to master something, you acquire that through experience. Now, keeping your finger very close to the pulse of what's happening in the transition space is crucial. Making sure that you stay on top of best practices is always key. But again, it's elusive. So everybody's transition is a little bit different. We're all coming from different walks of life, different branches, different MOSs, different capacities in which we serve. Some serve for 4 years. I served for 4 years, and Lucas, you did a full career. Our transitions were very, very different. Um, we're I like to think Recruit Military stands out. It's not that we like to think we're the best at anything that we do, but so does every other organization. Where I think we excel is being able to bring diversity of solutions, not
Yes.
just being a one-trick pony. Our focus is employment. That's our forte. That's where we focus. We have partners that support some of the other elements. We work with DAV to make sure that everybody's squared away with benefits and other employment related matters. We work with ACP to make sure that folks have access to mentorship. We lean on our partners for the ancillary elements that are absolutely vital to transition or to career attainment while being able to stay true to what we do and to what we know best, and that's employment. And when we talk about, knowing employment or offering a diverse repertoire of options, it's the verticals in which we facilitate those connections. How do we get the end user, the job seeker from the military community, even if, you don't have to just be transitioning, folks. For everybody that's listening, it's anybody that's ever worn the uniform. If you're a member of the Guard, member of the Reserve, your veteran status. I've been out for 15 years. Our services would still be perfectly applicable for me. You can use them for life, but there's different ways to make connections because it's not a one size fits all model. A lot of people know us for our career fairs. We do a lot of career fairs all across the country. Pre-COVID, we were doing about 120, 130 physical events every year. Now, post-COVID, as an organization have had an opportunity to kind of assess and consolidate in some cases, we're still looking at upwards of about 100 events that we're going to be doing in 2022. So we have a lot of career fairs, both physical and virtual, to make sure that we can accommodate everybody that's in those major metropolitan markets. But for those that aren't or don't reside or want to work in those areas, our virtual events are a great contingency, to cover down on those geographic gaps. But that is not the only way to get connected to employers that want to hire you, that want to retain you, to develop that social capital.
Yeah.
Events are great, networking events are great, shaking hands is great, but it's not the smoking gun for everybody. We have our job board. A lot of people don't always know that we have a dedicated job board that's specific just to the military community. Spouses as well. I want to make sure everybody understands when I say military community, military spouses are always included
Hmm.
in what we do. The family unit is incredibly important to the military, just lifeblood. So our job board has, upwards of it's been hovering well over 400,000 dedicated opportunities specifically to the
It's a lot of
military
jobs.
community. It's a lot of jobs. If you compare it to some of the other behemoths out there that are non-specific to a niche, Indeed, LinkedIn, which we're streaming on right now, they have larger volume than that. And again, at the end of the day, as a job seeker, we encourage you to pursue wherever the opportunity is. If it's with us, that's wonderful. If it's not, Godspeed to you. We're still here to help however we can. But for our job board, we've intentionally run interference on a lot of the rest of the population out there. We're catering to only 6% of the American population by focusing on veteran talent. So we're in a unique place. You mentioned the great resignation and the current economic climate. Generally speaking, there's more jobs than there are job seekers out there, period. And our job board is no exception to that. We have more jobs than we have people actively sourcing for open roles right now. So it's a force multiplier. For anybody that wants to, you got to start with the application process. Every pursuit of the next gig starts with an online application. You got to get into that company's ATS, their applicant tracking system. So by hitting the apply now button, that's where it starts. It starts that life cycle. So for everybody keeping, thinking like, job boards, it's a necessary evil. That's probably the wrong phrasing, but it's a step in the process that one must take. So it is about, who in some cases in networking, but you're always going to have to hit that apply now button. So we have, hundreds of thousands of open roles you can apply to right now from employers that have dedicated military hiring initiatives. These are not just random companies. We're not pulling them in from a state data bank or a national data bank or anything like that. These are all coming from the individual companies that are saying, not only am I hiring, but I am trying to hire military talent in particular. So when you marry job fairs, our job board, we also have placement services. We have a team of recruiters that are out there working with companies each and every day to fill very specific roles. Field service technicians, sales reps, leadership roles. All of these things that every company needs. We have recruiters that will cherry pick you from the system to actually place you as well. So it's kind of a triple threat as far as the way that we offer those connectivity services. So it really doesn't matter what you did, what you want to do moving forward. We're working with just about everybody, every industry that you can think of, and for every type of role that you can think of. Most employers understand military talent is better than entry level opportunities, so they're not typically sourcing for those entry level roles. They're there
Hmm.
in some cases. Like I went to school after the military, so
Right.
I needed kind of a side gig to augment my income so that I could focus on school. So there's a time and place for some of those roles, but most of the companies we're working with are looking for those leadership oriented individuals. And again, there's more than one way to facilitate that connection. So check out our career fairs, check out our job board.
Absolutely.
You can search by your MOS. There's some cool features and functionality within the platform that I'd encourage everybody to explore. But yeah, I like to think that Recruit Military stands out from the crowd in many ways, one of which being that we have a diverse array of solutions to offer both employers that are looking to hire and the end user, folks like us, our brothers and sisters in arms that are looking to make that career pivot post service or even if they've been out for a while.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's take a look over in the chat and see who we've got on board with us today. Looks like Gene Laurent, veteran looking for something better. Definitely come on over to the website. You're going to find a lot of something's better, most likely. Margie from Whiteman Air Force Base. She's the TAP manager. Margie, thanks for tuning in. Melissa from Fort Hood, on her way out in transition. Melissa, come on over to the website, please. Find your next career opportunity.
And in fact, if I can, Lucas,
Sure, go ahead.
we are hosting an event at Fort Hood
That's right.
right outside the gate. Actually, it's right off post because there's some restriction relative to capacity for an event that we can hold on base. So right off base again, like Lucas said, go to recruitmilitary.com,
When,
and if
when
you
is
go to
that event?
that's December 1st, if I'm not mistaken, December 1st. So coming up in just a handful of weeks, right after the Thanksgiving holiday break. We're going to have an
All right,
event in
Melissa,
Fort
if you're still with us, December 1st, be there, be square. Now, if Melissa shows up to that event, what advice would you give her on how to be successful?
Yeah,
What
great,
walking in
great.
the door, tons of employers.
Yeah,
What are the keys to success?
yeah, there's going to be dozens. There's always dozens at the very least. Some markets we have upwards of 100 plus, but there will be dozens of organizations representing just about every industry. Once again, if you want to go down the government contractor route or you want to make a pivot into the financial sector, there's going to be representation there. So I would recommend you register ahead of time if you can. Take a look at the lineup. We're going to share with you every organization that's going to be in attendance. Do a little bit of homework. Understand who you're going to be talking to, who you're going to be shaking hands with. Make sure that your resume is squared away at the very least, ideally tailored to the sort of organization or opportunity that you're going to pursue. If when you can, get on our job board and try to apply to a few of those positions from some of those organizations that are actually going to be on site. That way you can have a more meaningful conversation. Otherwise, it's like speed dating. You go in there, you
Right.
give them your 30-second elevator pitch, they give you theirs. Here's who we are, here's what we're hiring for. You say, here's who I am, and here's what I'm looking for. And then a lot of cases, the next step is, here's a position that's a fit. I encourage you to apply online, and then we'll follow up from there. If you do that ahead of time, you can have a more meaningful conversation on site. You can say, I applied to this job. I'm interested in learning more. What are my next steps? Things along those lines. Have a more in depth conversation. So, just making sure the basics, dress to impress, be confident, smile, eye
Elevator
contact.
pitch.
Yeah, elevator pitch is big. 30-second elevator pitch. We've got that within our resource center as well. So if you register for the event or you're thumbing around the website, go to our resource center. We've got guidance and how-to videos on how to craft that 30-second elevator pitch. So some of those basics will typically lead to general success.
Now, I heard some very positive statistics coming out of these career fairs. Um, how often would you say folks walk in the door and walk out anticipating a job opportunity?
Yeah, it's typically at least 50% from everything
Wow.
that we've seen across virtual and our physical events. Success is from my perspective, I would define as being invited for an interview,
Hmm.
being extended an offer, ideally accepting said offer. So from the surveying that we do, the feedback that we get from both employers and the job seekers that attend, it's a pretty high impact sort of event, but low stress, mind you. I know a lot of us are accustomed to, or are maybe a little tepid, or about what is next. We're
Hmm.
leaving the military. It's a culture shock. Again, whether you did 4 years or 20 plus years, it's still going to be a culture shock. But these events are very low stress. Most of the recruiters that are there representing these private companies in many cases are veterans themselves. They understand your journey. They understand what you've gone through. Your experience was their experience, and that helps to bridge that gap. When you go to a come one come all sort of event or a job board, you're just another number sometimes, whereas with these events they're very dedicated, and these companies have come in from far and wide just to talk to you at the off chance that they can encourage you to want to make their place of work your next career. So a lot of success, 50% typically on average. So right out the gate, you've got a 50-50 chance of walking in and walking out, being successful.
Chris, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to grab. Can you talk for a second about the virtual career fairs? How do
Yeah.
those work? I mean, am I going to see faces on here? Am I going to be? Is it going to look like a video game? I mean, what's that interface look like?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of different platforms out there. There's a lot of different virtual events you can attend. Again, I encourage you to attend every event you can get your hands on, assuming you've got the bandwidth to do so. When you peel back the layers, it's a relatively simplified communication platform. To call it a glorified chat room you know is not the right way to say it. You do have the ability to meet somebody eye to eye. You do have the ability to broadcast, to be connected through video conferencing. The employers will engage you and ask you if you want to be on camera. You don't have to be on camera. I know we've got some folks that are still trying to fine tune that 30-second elevator pitch, or maybe they just want to go to the event to just thumb around and see what kind of options they might have at their fingertips. These events are really great for that. You can engage in whatever level you want to, whether you want to engage in a simple chat to inquire about certain open roles or to do a follow-up, or if you want to do that video one-on-one to even knock out an initial interview on site, if you will,
Yeah.
during that session. All of that is certainly there. So you're going to create your profile, a professional profile. Some of it's very military specific questions, your rank, your MOS, schools that you went to. Do you have a security clearance? Keep in mind, we're working with a lot of agencies on the federal level, government contractors, on top of all of the other private, civilian quote unquote entities that we're working with. But there's a handful of data points that we want to make sure that the employers can see so that they know who you are and that they can reach out to you proactively, because they're going to have access to everybody's profile and resume even prior to the event taking place. So if you don't have that professional profile squared away and you didn't make it to that room or to talk to that recruiter, otherwise it could be a miss. It could be a real big missed
Right.
opportunity. But in this instance, your information will remain available to those organizations so that they can follow up with you and even potentially tee you up for some preliminary conversations prior to the event. So the virtual events were a little awkward when we initially made, all the pivots that we did last year when COVID first hit. But now that we've had, a decent amount of time to really learn from them, we've refined them, we fine-tuned them. It's a very streamlined process. And again, we see the same success rates at our virtual events than we do at our physical events.
Fantastic. Just one more question, and then I think we're going to close it out for the day. Chris, if you could just give one piece of advice, just one, to a transitioning service member, to a veteran job seeker, or a mil-spouse job seeker, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say go into the space, go into your next conversation with confidence, because corporate America has had enough time under their belts to understand that hiring military talent is not just about flag waving or
Mm,
altruism or patriotism. For those that want to start down that path, that's great. We like that. We love that. But we want to help everybody understand that it actually just makes good business sense. Veterans, I'm not trying to say everybody else is no good, but veterans are a top tier talent pool. The U.S. government has invested considerable resources, energy, money, training to making you
schools,
the
training.
absolutely schools, and to make you the best within the capacity that you're serving, to make you an expert within your field. Um, and you also are kind of forced into leadership roles at some point. You're going to be in a leadership role, whether that's a team leader or a brigade commander. You're in leadership roles at some point because the military kind of demands that. That's just going to be part of it at some point. That can't be taught in a college classroom, and these companies
Nope.
understand that. They want you. They're borderline foaming at the mouth for you. Veteran unemployment is almost a full percentage point underneath our non-veteran counterparts, and that's
That's
indicative
great.
of how valuable corporate America sees us. We're easier to hire, we're easier to retain. So I would encourage everybody to be confident and to know that you've got something that the consumer, the employer, wants.
Yeah, and to all those veterans out there who are wondering what they're going to do next, yeah, absolutely. What Chris is saying, he's nailing it right on. You're not a beggar with your hat in your hand out here saying, "Please, just give me any job." Know that you are value added and that you are wanted in the workspace. And there are people out there that want you. All right, so
Very much
yeah,
so.
absolutely, Chris. Thank you very much on behalf of Recruit Military and the folks that were able to join us today. Thank you very much for your time. And for being on the show and sharing your time with our veterans, our transitioning service members, and our mil spouses. It was very much a pleasure, and I'm sure they appreciate it.
It's an honor, Lucas. I appreciate what you do and all the topics that you cover here.
Hey, for all those job seekers out there, Recruit Military will be hosting its National Virtual Career Fair. So if you go over to our website and you find out that you're just not that close to one of our hands-on brick and mortar events, please feel free to jump in and go to one of our career fair, our National Career Fair online. We've gone ahead and we've dropped the link in the chat. We hope you go ahead and use it. Also, if you haven't already done so, do yourself a solid and register on www.recruitmilitary.com. Get your profile built up to 100%, upload your resume, and get started in that job seeking process. Well, that about wraps it up for us today. Excuse me. In the chat window, you'll find a couple of links. One is to my LinkedIn page. I'd love to connect with you and answer whatever offline questions you might have. You'll also find a link to the Recruit Military page, to our list of events. Trust me, it's worth your time. This has been Lucas Connolly for Recruit Military Live. Thank you all for joining us, and until next time, good luck and Godspeed.